Now going to read through page 95, making the changes too. As I read through, follow with your finger. I may ask you to pause and do a task on your copy of the book. Kings and Queens. The idea of the reformers soon spread to other countries. Some kings and queens in Europe liked the reformers' ideas. Others did not. It was not long before the reformers' ideas reached Britain. In the map it shows where Luther began his protest in Germany and where Calvin spread his ideas from Switzerland. The map through colours shows when their beliefs spread. Protestant ideas reached more and more European lands as the century went by, even though some of these countries remained Catholic. In England and Wales, Edward VI, 1547 to 1553. Before we continue, please draw an arrow to the V and the I. Please make sure that you write down that the V equals 5 and the I equals 1. That's why he's Edward VI. Edward VI was only 9 when he became king. He and all his advisors were strongly Protestant. They began to create a Protestant church. Priests were told to wear simple white linen garments. Next to garments, write clothes. Priests were told to wear simple white linen garments instead of their usual fancy vestments. Next to vestments, draw an arrow and write special clothes worn by priests. Priests had to replace stone altars with wooden communion tables. Next to communion, write important Protestant church service. Pause the video now to do this. In 1549, a new prayer book was written by the Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. It was in English. In his second prayer book of 1552, an astonishing change was made. The Old Catholic Mass was replaced by a much simpler communion service. There were no executions, although one Catholic bishop was imprisoned for opposing the changes. Bishops who clung on to the old ways were replaced. Protestant preachers worked hard to persuade people to accept the changes. But some people carried on worshipping peacefully in the old ways. In Lancashire, many Catholic communities managed to avoid the changes altogether. Meanwhile, in Scotland, here the ideas of John Calvin spread rapidly. In 1560, the Scottish Parliament set up a special Protestant church called a Presbyterian church. In a moment, pause the video and write down that Presbyterian means church run by the people. In 1567, Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic, was forced to give up her throne to her Protestant son, James. Let us turn to page 96. Mary I, 1553 to 1558. Mary was a Roman Catholic. She changed everything back again. The Pope was restored as head of the English Church. All the changes made by Edward VI were cancelled. Services were once again held in Latin. In 1554, Mary married a Roman Catholic, Philip of Spain. She also began to persecute the Protestants. Persecute means to use laws to single people out, to try to get them to change their ideas, to pick on them in a cruel way. Please write a definition of persecute. She also began to persecute the Protestants. During her reign, about 300 Protestants were burned to death. One of these people was Thomas Cranmer, the archbishop who rewrote the prayer book in Edward's reign. Coping with the changes. Ordinary lives. All over Europe, ordinary people were caught up in the changes. Ordinary people did not always hold the same beliefs as their rulers. Sometimes people changed their minds freely. Sometimes they were forced to change their minds. Sometimes they fled to other countries where they hoped to be safer. During Mary's reign, it was dangerous to be a Protestant. Some very famous and important people, like the former Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, were burnt at the stake. Draw an arrow to stake, and right next to it, piece of wood hammered in the ground that people were tied to. See the picture on the right for ideas of what it looked like. But most of the people burnt in Mary's reign were ordinary people. Here is a list of all the people who were burnt. The numbers in this list are the numbers of each group of people in each section. So, for example, men, there are 21 priests, 13 weavers, 9 gentlemen, 7 husbandmen, that is, rich farmers, 6 labourers, 4 fullers, and 4 shearmen. Remember, it is 4 of everything on the row. They are people who look after sheep. 3 tanners, 3 sawyers, 3 brewers, 3 painters, 2 tailors, 2 butchers, 2 blacksmiths, 2 bricklayers, 2 carpenters, 2 servants, 1 apothecary, 1 schoolmaster, 1 merchant, 1 linen draper, 1 constable, 1 cook, 1 barber, 1 glazier, 1 artificer, 1 wheelwright, 1 glover, 1 shoemaker, 1 miller, 1 merchant, and 114 unknown. Of the women, 6 widows. Right next to widows, wives whose husbands have died. "25 wives, 5 unmarried, 1 gentlewoman, 5 wives of husbandmen." Remember, these are rich farmers. 2 servant maids, 2 wives of millers, 2 wives of weavers, 1 wife of a brewer, 1 wife of a pewterer, 1 wife of a shoemaker, 1 wife of an upholsterer, 1 blind daughter of a rope maker, 19 unknown. We know quite a lot about some of these people because their stories are recorded in the Book of Martyrs by John Foxe. Remember, a martyr is someone who has died for something they believe in. John Foxe was a Protestant. In his book, he made all Catholics appear wicked and cruel. He wanted his readers to remember the courage and faith of the Protestants. Here is a picture from Foxe's book. It shows 4 people being burnt to death for their beliefs.